Good morning, Veronique. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good in yourself.
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Excellent. I
Early
might be.
bird, eh?
I kind of need to get a staging going at the same time, so I might just turn off my camera for most of it and go edit at my things. Okay.
Nice. You got a listing coming up?
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully this weekend it's going to be live. So
Awesome. There you
yeah.
go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Rhea, Penny, welcome.
Hey, how are ya?
Great. I still need a glamour shot like your portrait there.
How are things today? This is going to be a good one.
I think so. It's
Awesome.
kind of a weird path I've been down about social psychology and some concepts that I think would probably make sense for a lot of people, but we'll see. We won't
Sounds
know
good.
until the end when you're like, well, that was probably a 2 out of 5. So good for you, Mike.
I'll
Um,
let you know. I'll let you know. I'm on my way out to a building inspection, so if I jump off, it's just heading into inspection, but
oh,
I'm
good.
anxious to hear what you have to say.
Everyone's out here closing deals. Maria,
Mhm.
welcome. Good morning.
Hi,
So we have a staging consult. We have an inspection. What are you doing this morning?
you're talking to me, Maria?
Of course.
I have nothing today to do.
Awesome.
This is
That's
the first
great.
time I'm joining this meeting, so I'm just new.
All right. New to the team or new to the trainings? New to
Both of them.
All right. Well, welcome. Hopefully it does not disappoint.
No, of course not. Thank you.
I do my best to get a little bit of information out there for everyone, and we'll go from there. So we're gonna usually people will take a couple minutes to kind of roll in. We'll start in a few minutes. As always, the content is kind of peripheral to the learning. I find people who engage and ask questions and all that tend to pull away with more. So feel free to drop questions in the chat. If you're feeling as brazen, you can unmute yourself and be like, hey, Mike, what about this? And we can kind of have a tangestine conversation about that. But the goal is by the end of today, I will have hopefully put, an idea or two about how to think about the business. So usually if you've been on my trainings in the past, there's a lot of tactical discussion of, here's some things that you can go do right now. This one is a little bit more cerebral, but there are still some ideas laid in throughout that I hope everyone can pull a little bit of information from. So what I'm going to do is share my screen and hop over to the presentation and go from there. So I just want to make sure that everyone can see this. I want you to, in the chat, if you can hear me very clearly, 1 out of 10, 10 being the loudest, most clearest it's coming through, 1 being turn your mic up or figure something else out. Just let me know that you guys are being heard. 10, perfect. Good enough. If someone's a 10, usually everyone's a 10. So I'm going to go off that. I had to trick my wife that way. She said I was a 10, so I stopped dating. So what I'm going to do is make sure that everyone can see the slide, and then we're going to jump into it. So when I got asked to do this presentation, Sarah, who runs Northern Alliance, was like, do you have any interesting topics that you've been following lately? And I said, boy, do I ever. For the last little bit, I've been studying social psychology and how it comes to play in business and society and all this stuff. And a full disclaimer, none of this in the presentation is necessarily a proprietary concept from me. It's actually a series of concepts that I've been reading, organized over, a presentation and applied specifically to real estate. So my hope is if there's questions about it, I can either answer them for you based on my interpretation of it or point you directly to the books and you guys can go and dive into this weird little rabbit hole that I've been in. And what triggered this is I'm sure if each of us took an honest look at our cities, there are a few agents that feel like they're everywhere. Is that right? I'm sure if, like, I know in Ottawa, there's a handful of names that we could pop up. Thankfully, our team is one of them because we do quite a bit of business. And what I wanted to understand is what's the psychology of people seeing faces and the same faces everywhere? And how does that impact our business? And that was something that became a little bit more clear to me the more I read about social psychology. And specifically, there was one topic that seemed to kind of overrule everything else. And we're going to cover that here. It's a little bit more towards the end, but I want to kind of lead up into that. So hang around until the end while we hit kind of a critical mass on the topics of discussion. Now, talking with a lot of agents, a lot of them feel otherwise invisible, right? They're coming up against really established, highly visible, well-saturated agents who maybe have been around for a while, built massive teams. I mean, if you're in Ottawa and you're not part of our team, you might actually be feeling like our team is one of those people that tend to overshadow people. We do a lot of business, we're everywhere, and our agents are phenomenal. So if you are feeling invisible, my hope is that, you could take some of what we're learning today, go out, and at the end, I'm actually going to present a 30-day plan for you to hopefully get you going in a trajectory that's going to make you more visible, top of mind, very influential in your community. And obviously, we want to do all of that without being annoying. I joke around and kind of say that I'm the anti-realtor because I don't really like realtors in the traditional sense. And I think if you guys have worked with me either on an offer, I tend to be quite different than other realtors that you tend to work with. So what I want you guys to do is be able to build your businesses in a significantly meaningful way without being annoying. And how are we going to do that? So that's the big question of what we're going to be doing today. I want to take you guys from, invisible to inevitable, right? So that you're the only option, right? I want to talk about the power of social psychology. So how do people choose the realtor? In the past, it's generally kind of a referral, and that's what a lot of established realtors would say. My business is built on referral, yada, yada. Sure. However, there's also a ton of influential characteristics of being a realtor who's been in business for a while. Your signs have been out for a while. A lot of people will choose to work with you based on emotions, habit, and familiarity, right? So it's not always about credentials. It's not always about, we sold whatever 600 ends last year. Most people don't necessarily care about that, although it does help. Rather, people will care to work with someone who makes them feel good, is part of their regular day, and who they feel some kind of affinity towards and trust, right? So rather than going out and trying to push yourself down people's throats and into their lives to sell their house, what I want to do is actually show you how potentially you could be pulling people in towards you and still being the salesperson. However, rather than, cramming your name and your offer down their throats, they're actually asking you for your offer. And that's a huge distinction of how really successful agents operate their lives versus how, the agents looking for the next, quick fix are running their business. Obviously, a lot of this is going to require some amount of framework, right? So when we look at how we attract people, how do we create emotion and habits and all that, for a lot of people who don't necessarily, track all of these little nuances, I'm going to give you the leverages today that you can essentially take, interpret in your own way, and then develop your own content and your concepts and eventually trigger points in your potential clients. That's going to help you stay top of mind. And throughout all of this, we're going to look at human behavior. I find, and it sounds a little bit alien, I find humans quite fascinating for the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And I think that we're quite fallible and, we're open to influence a lot more than we probably think we are. Even those who are like, oh, you can't sell me on this. Like, sure, maybe I'm not here to sell you on it, but I'm here to help you buy it from me. And they're like, well, that's stupid. That's the same thing. Like, but it's not, right? So this is some of the stuff that we're going to cover over the next probably 35 to 40 minutes. And then we're going to leave some time for questions if there are any. And always it will be recorded and shared and disseminated through our email list. So you can always come back to this. And if you want to reach me directly, you know where to find me. So one of the first things that I learned is that it really seems in society that there are a few people running most of the business and influencing most of the community, right? So when you think about it, it's sort of Pareto's principle. There's 20% of people doing 80% of the work, And if you even chop that up further, that top 1% is actually going to be doing a lot more of the business proportionally. One thing that sort of triggered me on this to look at was I was looking at the census data for Canadian income filings. And I think a lot of people, when they think about the 1%, think about incredibly rich people, in their ivory towers, own tremendous amounts of property, income plus $1 million. And I'm curious to know from you guys, what income threshold do you think you need to rank in the 1% of Canadians? Drop it in the chat. I'm really curious to know this. What income do you think you need to be in the 1% of Canadians? Or feel free to throw it out. If you don't want to type it, you can just say it out loud. Because I think this is important because it talks to our perceptions. What income is needed to be
I'm gonna say maybe 60,000.
60,000?
Yeah.
So hold that number because that's actually interesting. But it's a little bit more than that.
Okay.
To be in the what? 1%?
1%.
200,000?
Yeah, so to be in the top 1% of Canadians, you need to earn more than $204,000. Now, to Veronique's terms, the top 1% globally is actually 71,000. And that's factoring in like all the billionaires. So a lot of people look to them and be like, they're untouchable. Well, they don't really raise the mark all that much. And if you take them out, the global average income is like 47. So it's a lot lower. Now, if you take the 0.1% of Canadians, what do you think their income is? So we go to 1%, the admission to that club is 200 and change. What do you think the 0.1% is?
400 and up?
It's $6.1 million a year.
Huh.
So what I want you guys to think about as we're going through this is the psychology behind a lot of these numbers, right? Just like in your city, wherever you might be, there is likely a handful of agents doing almost all of the business. Okay. And what I've come to learn, and this book specifically was Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point. He talks about how the very highest rung of people in any society, role, government, anything, have these three qualities. The first one is they are super connectors. And what that means is that you are out there meeting people and connecting people with people without benefit to you. And I think that's the big one. A lot of people especially when referrals are part of your business, you will refer with some expectation or flat out a payment, right? And those referrals do influence people's decisions. If you are out there making connections for the sake of making connections, that's a different kind of connector, right? Become a super connector is stage one. Now, how can you do that? Obviously, you can go out, look into your community and identify some partners, coffee shops, fitness instructors, clothing people. I really like the guy that does my suits, right? So he's my person and I introduce him to him and I don't get anything from it, right? Those people will never forget the amount of business that you can give them without asking for anything else. And in turn, that reciprocity should come back to you in some capacity later down the road. Now, the next concept that Malcolm Gladwell talks about is mavens. And what a maven is they are people who are obsessed with knowledge and share it. So it's one thing to have all the knowledge. It's another thing to hoard all the knowledge, right? A dragon with their cave full of gold is not necessarily rich because you can't do much with that. It just sits there, right? You have knowledge, you're rich with knowledge, go out and share it with people. And this, specifically in real estate, what this looks like is, delivering local market updates that specifically don't sound like every other agent. Now, what I mean by that is you could do it in video form if you want to, but try not to sound like other agents. If you're doing it in physical form, rather than mail it out like every other agent does, maybe you do a more tailored strategy where you're actually door knocking and you're getting FaceTime and you're making sure that you can talk to them in the moment. Now, the last one, and I think this is really important because you might be like, duh, Mike, we're all salespeople. It literally says that as part of our real estate license. I was talking with somebody 3 weeks ago, and they run an Instagram account called Ottawa is Not Boring. And they have a tremendous following, tremendous engagement. And I was chatting with her and I was like, this is really interesting. Like, what made you want to do this? And she's like, oh, I just love the city. And obviously in my mind, I'm like, okay, but how could you profit from this? And that's my own thought process is like, you could probably make a ton of money as a real estate agent, as an influencer, as a whatever. And I was like, how are you monetizing it? And she's like, oh, Instagram gives me ad money. You start to calculate the views and all that. She's not making a tremendous amount of money. She's living, probably modestly, making a couple of bucks here and there for business features. But when you think about someone like that, if she stepped into real estate, she is a super connector, she is a maven. And then if she was able to turn her skills into, being persuasive and charismatic and have other people believe in you, she'd do incredibly well as a real estate agent. The thing is, she's just so hyper passionate about becoming a connector and being a maven that she doesn't want to do sales. So she has a tremendous amount of influence on people, but will not necessarily move the needle on the income wise, at least yet, until some business plan that she has, which she doesn't, comes to fruition. So on the sales side, this is probably the easiest part because we can do it on our own. How do we learn to become better salespeople, right? We come to our Northern Alliance training, we hear Mike ramble on, hear some interesting concepts, and then you walk away and keep doing the same thing that you've been doing. You're not going to have any change in your life, right? Versus take some of this, take my 30-day plan at the end of this presentation, implement it, and you're going to be off to the races. And you will be that salesperson who can actually be confident about being a salesperson, because not all salespeople are slimy, right? We're out here doing our best and making sure that we're doing it the right way. So how do these look like? I kind of rambled through them, but let's look at them specifically. On a connector side, right? Do pop-up days at local businesses. There was one agent that is in Bracebridge, which is kind of Muskoka area. She does Muffin Mondays. So every Monday she pops up at a new bakery, buys muffins for people, and then leaves without expectation. And it's funny because they've actually tried to understand from the business owner who it was. They find her and they've actually been following her around, where it's been kind of this muffin tour of Bracebridge and Muskoka. And she's actually got quite a bit of business that way. Obviously, you can host events. There's one event in Ottawa and it's led by an accountant. And there's probably 200 to 300 people there regularly at most of their events. And they're all connectors, right? So I've met some amazing people there. One thing that worked well for me early on in my career was interviewing others on a podcast. So what I did is I picked an area of the city and I interviewed business owners. And I didn't interview them to say, tell me about your house. What do you like about your house? Would you sell your house with me? No, I talked about them. I talked about their experience in the neighborhood, their businesses, whatever's important to them. And that's a great way to, have people reach out through YouTube channels or whatever to support businesses locally. Now, on the Maven side, I touched on this with Ottawa is Not Boring. You're gonna share very regular and consistent real estate topics on specific concepts and info, right? I think where a lot of people go wrong is they go, well, this is a home tour, this is a home tour, this is a home tour. Why aren't you doing business with me? Look at this home tour. This is a great home tour. I'm still not understanding why you're not doing business with me. Get out there. And if you're going to do it in video format, find interesting topics, right? If you really want to work with investors, do, a weekly segment on Ouellette cash flow where you will analyze a property. Do topics on cash damming or tax strategies and more advanced concepts. Similarly, if you really want to sell, estate lots or whatever that might be, you could easily have information on septic beds and wells and all this kind of fun stuff. If you're going to do it off video, you can do marketing and info packages at prospective listings. One thing that's working really well for our agents right now is looking through specific neighborhoods, specific houses, specific price points, and essentially creating a package and going and dropping off that information and talking with people. And when you are prepared for that door knock, you're able to talk more confidently about that house, the market, all that kind of fun stuff. Now, on the sales side, you want to keep developing and share your influence with prospective clients. I'm going to skip the middle one because it sounds kind of like a no-brainer. And you want to play the numbers. The sales game, and any time that you're going to be on a commission basis and having to hustle for what you are going to eat, you need to play the numbers. You know, you're going to get 10 to 15 no's before you get your one. We all know our statistics, and play those numbers. Now, this is an interesting one because I was chatting with an agent last week, and they're like, I don't understand why I don't have any business coming in. And I was like, okay, what are you doing? And they told me, we're doing door knocks, we have the package, we're doing all this. And I said, okay, well, what's the problem? And they're like, well, they just don't pull the trigger with me. And I said, are you asking why? Like, are you asking them to pull the trigger with you? And they're like, no. Okay. Well, imagine I'm sitting here telling you all this information and then just stand there looking at you blankly. It gets a little weird, right? And you might think it sounds a bit abrasive. I mean, at the end of things, you could just be like, hey, do you want to give this a go? Or, you know, are you ready to pull the trigger? Or you could say, would you like to sign a listing agreement? But that's probably not a great thing to ask. Okay. Always ask for the business at the end of it. People will not necessarily jump right into your arms and say, please, you're the person I have to work with right now. Show me everything, sign, here's my ID, here's my FinTrack, all that stuff. You need to be able to ask for the business, and you need to help walk them through that business. Okay. I'm just going to pull up the chat. We're good. All right. Now, stickiness. This is an important one because no matter how much work you do, if you don't actually make an impact in their life, you're not going to stick in their brain. So I believe this concept came from a book called Social Psychology for Beginners. And it was one of the first concepts, right? You need to make your message memorable. And this sounds like it should be fairly straightforward. But I think what a lot of people do is they come in, they talk super fast, they don't necessarily ask the right questions, and they don't have an emotional connection to the people that they're talking with, right? Interactive video. This is one I've seen a tremendous amount of people go, I love YouTube, it gets me leads, that's awesome. But then you start to look at their video and it's really just a video of them talking to you. And I understand that by definition, YouTube is not necessarily interactive, but what you can do instead is say, you know, if you guys think that, you know, this house should be worth more than $1 million, let me know in the comments. Or, you know, while we're walking to the next house, why don't you hit that like and share button so that we, you know, and then get them engaging with the content that's going on your social media platforms, right? That encouragement and the engagement goes a very long way, because if someone starts to have a dialogue with you on, you know, a YouTube comment section, that's something that could very easily be translated into, you know, hey, this is a very interesting concept that we're talking about. What's, you know, how can we get connected to dive deeper into this? Okay. Simplicity plus surprise. This is the kind of the secret formula to stickiness. And when I say this, I think a lot of people like to overcomplicate our day-to-day role because they feel like they're not bringing enough value. And what I mean by that is, in the absence of you feeling confident about what you do, you could try to blow a little bit of smoke, right? So when we're going in, we say, this is how I evaluate properties. This is why I evaluate properties this way. It's a lot different than other agents because these reasons, right? And when you change it up on them and bring something fresh, but it's still easy to understand, it sticks. Okay. So think about your listing presentations as a way to create an emotional bond between you and the person that you're sitting beside or in front of the screen. Okay. This is one, and I don't know if Steve is still on, but if you've been on the other side of a deal from me, you'll know that when I send you an offer, you're at least, if you're not going to like the offer, you're at least going to love the email. And Steve, are you still on? Is Steve Alexopoulos still here? If not, that's all right.
Sorry,
Anyway,
I was on mute.
it's all good. So I've sent you a couple offers recently. Tell me a little bit, tell people a bit about the experience.
Well, the first thing I would say is that you add some humor when you put the offer in. At least to me, I don't know if you do that with other people,
Yep.
but I think I mean, now that I think about it, you're probably doing it to lighten up the mood originally, so it doesn't come across as like, you're battling me kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think writing engaging and fun stuff amongst colleagues and business owners is a big way to stand out. And one of the things that was interesting was I sent a offer to an agent for a client last year, and it was very similar to the ones that Steve got. And if you want to see them, I'm happy to share them with you. I really, really love writing um, um, marketing copy, we'll call it. So I do use a lot of my own personality in it. I use humor. I touch on the emotion. I build curiosity. And it was funny because I sent in a fairly low ball offer to a client last year, or to a seller last year, and they came back and very surprisingly accepted it. And their only answer was, "I don't know what kind of magic fairy dust you put on this, but my seller loved it and went for it." And like it was significantly under value. Like if I'm not mistaken, it was like 13 or 14% under the listing price. And that's a way that you can connect with, other agents as well as, their clients, because they're going to sit there and be like, this is a weird email. I've never seen anything like this. Check this out. Right. And that kind of goes to the next part. I'm a believer that we do not operate in an adversarial system. I don't think that one agent wins and one client loses. My thought process is that we are in a collaborative profession where we need both sides to work together in a way so that everyone walks away with a deal that is fair and one that people can be happy with, right? So don't be shy to, share a little bit more with the other agent on the other side. Conversely, if your clients are, interested in reading letters or whatever that might be, advise them as well that it could also be an emotional sales tactic that you should probably protect them from. So what you need to do is collaborate with both your client and the other agent. Make sure that you're walking away with a situation that's good for all. And when you're communicating to all parties, think about simplicity and surprise. Everybody loves a good little surprise. It makes us feel good, even if it's just in the moment. And then you will be remembered, right? Because I did another deal with that same agent this year and a similar email. And he said, when I saw your name come across, I just thought, oh no. So it sticks, right? Now, the context is a wicked important thing. Now, this is where kind of the rubber starts to meet the asphalt here, where some of the social cues that we have been talking about now start to get put into practice, right? Because it's all well and good to, understand psychologically that we need to connect emotionally with people. We need to understand that, regular communication with people is important, right? The least obvious thing that we need to be pulling is context, right? In what avenues are people seeing us? And are those the right avenues? And when people see you in places that they are familiar with and that they trust, right, they're going to understand that you become more trusted in those moments. Okay. So when you think about that, what does that look like? That could be, if you live in a neighborhood with, well, I can share you, I had a door knock on my own house by an agent, and they came to the door, and we live in an estate lot subdivision in Ottawa. And they came to the door and, I didn't recognize them. And they essentially came up and said, hey, my name is so-and-so. I have some information for you. Would you like to see it? And I was like, information about what? And he's like, well, I saw that you, recently purchased your house. Would you guys like an updated evaluation for your net worth? And I was like, that's an interesting approach to this. They saw that we bought our house in this neighborhood about a year ago. They want to give me an update on my net worth, and how it's changed over the last year. So I said, yeah, interesting. And I opened it, and in the marketing was a bunch of like townhome comparables. Now, to give you perspective, my neighborhood is not service connected. The closest neighborhood that is service connected is probably 10 kilometers away. And there are no townhomes in my immediate community. So and I asked him, I said, have you done many of these sales? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, so I'm an agent, and I will ask you again, have you done many of these sales? And he said, no. And I said, okay, so you're about to go lie to all of my neighbors, and I don't think that's a great idea, right? He was in the wrong context. Now, if he had stayed 10 kilometers closer to town in the communities where townhomes are very popular, he may have had a shot, right? When I went to the bus the next day to pick up my kids, everyone was kind of laughing at him, right? So don't be that guy. Don't appear out of nowhere without any context that you are not familiar with. Be prepared, right? And I'm not saying don't shoot for the moon and go for different neighborhoods. You need to prepare for it, okay? Then that kind of goes to the next part. Don't blow smoke, right? When you're going into a specific neighborhood, and every neighborhood has traits about it that can be researched, understood, and then implemented through your new knowledge. And you want to use very geosocial content for one neighborhood. So this particular one, he was trying to prospect estate lots with townhome level information, and that it was just out of context, right? So if you want to do estate lots, if you want to do luxury builds, if you want to do log homes, waterfront, cottage, whatever that might be, there is very specific content out there. There's ways of talking about it, everything. Make sure that you're well aware of what you are saying. Now, I like to say, we'll call it a neighborhood lockdown. And I know lockdown in the last few years has been a bit of a faux pas word. But if you are trying to go across your city, across diverse neighborhoods, across, all types of houses, you're going to spread yourself thin, right? One thing that we like to talk about a lot on the team is being very specific on kind of neighborhoods and niches, and what do you want to serve, and who do you want to serve, and how do you want to do it, right? So some of the examples of creating context around your own business, host a pumpkin patch day, right? Find somewhere like in Ottawa, it's Foster's Farm. They do a pumpkin patch day. So once a year, I pick up a bunch of pumpkins. We host some pictures for the kids and the animals and stuff like that. And then all of my clients leave with a pumpkin, right? So I'm trying to create an affinity to, Foster's and my clients, and understand that, with repetition each year, my clients are going to go through roughly the same event, and it's going to be a lot of fun. There'll be some changes, but it's building trust in my community. Okay. Another one, if you're big on social, and again, I've pulled away from social for, a hot minute now. I saw one, it was called South End Life, and it was talking about a very hyper local kind of Miami page. And all they talked about was what was going on in the South End neighborhood in Miami, right? So I went to look at the houses there. I had a discussion with the person who runs it. We're talking like, $5+ million houses are like the bottom end of the neighborhood. So when you're selling, $5 million houses at, 3% down there, you can make a pretty good life by, being that hyper focused. Okay. So when you're looking at these contexts and you're trying to create context, the more specific that you could be, the better. Okay. Now, this is one that blew my mind. And I think it's really important, especially during, what's going on in Canada with the elections and signs going up everywhere. Essentially, this is a concept from Revenge at the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, and does a lot of research on this magic third number. And very big institutions are using this magic third as a way to socially engineer society. And the premise is, when you're perceived to be everywhere, you're not just seen, but you're also trusted. And that's to say, trusted, but that doesn't even mean that you're justified in being trusted. It's just that you've hit a critical mass. Now, what a critical mass is a reference to essentially a social tipping point where a group dynamic fundamentally shifts once a critical mass of 1/3 is made up of outsiders, newcomers, or minority voices. Now, a lot of the book was focused on kind of the society structures and stuff like that. But as an agent, you can be a brand new agent. And if you sort of force yourself to saturate your market and you are being seen at least 1/3 of the time in most people's eyes, that helps you get a critical mass quicker. And a lot of the times you can do it fairly inexpensively or free, right? Invest your time creating video content online. You can attend real world events, and then you have your open house signs, postcards, community boards, all that kind of fun stuff. But the one thing that I find very interesting is that there's an opportunity to be that magic third, not to the entire city, but to a group of qualified buyers. And I say that because my email list right now is just under 9,000 people. I send out 3 weekly emails. The first one on a Monday is the deal of the week. So what I do is I go into our, builder portal, see what builders are looking to offer deals to clients, and I put that offer in front of, let's call it 9,000 people. Now, I have my last opt-in rate from this past week. I think I had 71% open rate and probably about 30% click through. So I know that there's a significant amount of people at least seeing my message every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Wednesday, I send out a market update, and it just talks about how many new houses have come to market, how many have sold, and anything meaningful about the inventory and how it's affecting buyers and sellers. Very similar open rates. And then on Friday, I get a little more creative and I create a story around a concept that, popped up over this week, right? That one tends to have a little less engagement, but the people who actually open it usually respond in higher rates. So higher engagement, less open rates, but I know the people reading that really care. And I understand that it could seem daunting, and it is a lot of work to get out and compete with people who've been in the business for 25 years, right? Or, teams that might have 30 agents out there hustling the name. So as a new agent or as someone who's trying to build their business, imagine that you're getting your open house signs on every corner every weekend. You're having your seasonal events like a pumpkin patch day or, a little egg hunt at the Boys and Girls Club or whatever that might be. And then on top of that, and being physically present in your community, you're also updating, a weekly or twice weekly YouTube videos about real estate. And that's where you're going to start to see yourself build up, build up, build up. And the one thing that's super important with the magic third is that number is truly magic. So what they found is that 30, like from 0 to about 31%, there was virtually no change amongst the group's connection to that new to the new element, right? But as soon as it hit 33%, it completely shifted. And they did studies on, it's going to sound horrible, but there was something in the States called white flight, where if immigrants were buying houses, they found that as soon as a neighborhood hit 33%, white people were gone. They looked at Harvard University. They looked at Purdue Pharmaceutical, who created the opioid crisis. They looked at everything, and it was continually finding that 33% saturation was the tipping point for people's perception. So it's a weird thing to track. I'm not certain how to track it yet, aside from be as visible as possible everywhere in your community. And when I say community, I don't always mean physical community, because you might actually serve a certain type of buyer and you build your own kind of community. It's kind of like Reddit with all the subreddits and all that fun stuff. Those are individual communities within a larger community. So this is a very interesting concept. And if you want to interact with it, you can even just go to ChatGPT and say, can you tell me more about the magic third principle from Malcolm Gladwell's book? And it'll you can go down a very, very, very interesting rabbit hole just on this topic. So if there's anything that I want you guys to pull away from today, saturation matters, and get out there as fast as possible into the minds of your potential clients, because they will choose someone else if they are not seeing you very regularly. So I promised you guys a 30-day blueprint. Okay, let's put it all together. Step number one, you're going to choose your target neighborhood. You're going to dig into why you want to service that neighborhood. Going back to my little friend who door knocked, my assumption is he is a new agent, saw a bunch of, million plus homes and wanted to list those. So good for him. He tried. Now we go to the next one. What value do you truly bring to the table with this class of home? Unfortunately, he brought none, and he looked a bit like a bozo. Okay. When you guys choose your neighborhoods, I want you guys to be very specific about what value you bring to them, not necessarily what value do they bring to you. And in doing so, you're going to find that perhaps a part of you needs to change in order to service that type of clientele, right? If for myself, I've recently found that I'm working with a lot of investors. So I typically am a high kind of social interaction type person, but seeing that people now want very in-depth statistics. So I'm having to shift my focus and how I'm presenting information. So who do you want to be? And is that conducive to how you can offer yourself out to the community, right? Step two, I want you to take the connector, the maven, and the salesperson characteristics, put them on a page. And I want you to plan out how you can kind of touch in each point. So a couple of instances of, this is how I'm going to connect people. This is the information I'm going to present as a maven. And, I'm going to read 2 books in the next 30 days about becoming a better salesperson. And everyone I meet and talk about with real estate, I'm going to say, how could I help you? Right? That's a very interesting question. It's pretty low risk. And they might find that you have some really great discussions. If you guys don't want to do 3 columns on a paper and you really like technology, there's an app called Xmind, and it's a mapping app, and it can help systematize things. Okay. Here's the meat and potatoes of this. In the next 30 days, I would love to see you guys do 1 event, 1 content series, and 1 community giveaway or guide. Okay. 1 event, pretty straightforward. What can you host in the next, 30 days, starting today? Not necessarily like I'm going to wait till May 1st, and then that's a healthy 30 days of just straight. Start planning that now, right? Last week I met with an agent, and she's planning a flower giveaway, right? Out in Bracebridge. She's done a lot of flower content over the last few years and has actually got a lot of business from it. 1 content series, right? What are you going to talk about? Do you want to talk about the neighborhoods? Do you want to talk about features of houses? Do you want to talk about investment quality and stuff? Whatever you are going to do, I want you to plan 1 content series. And at minimum, that has to look 1 YouTube video a week, right? So 4 pieces of content. It's not that hard. You just got to get out your phone, get some ideas on paper, and start filming yourself. Okay. 1 community giveaway. This is very easy. I did it Tuesday. I went into my favorite shop in Ottawa, and I said, hey guys, I want to give away a $50 gift card. Can I put a QR code up? And they're like, yep, no problem. Boom. So end of the month, we'll give away a $50 gift card. It gets them some reviews, and it gets me some emails. Okay. Last part, track everything. No matter what you're doing, weight loss, personal growth, working out, whatever, what gets measured gets results. And it's the same thing here. So track the amount of conversations you're having, track the connections that you're having, track the leads you're getting, track everything that you can. And you'll find that if a lot of people go, well, do you have a spreadsheet for that? Well, yeah, I have a spreadsheet, but it works for how my mind thinks about things, right? And it's continually evolving. So create your own spreadsheet, and you'll find comfort in making it your very own. So I want you guys to take a quick screenshot of this and, commit to one another that, if we were to sit down in the next 4 weeks or after the next 4 weeks, I'm very curious to know what people's kind of experiences were with this. given that, now you have everything to be the most influential agent. And I want to leave you with this. You do not need to shout the loudest. And I know that sounds kind of interesting because people who know me often know that I am sometimes the loudest in a room. So I have to curb my enthusiasm sometimes because it's not about how loud you shout. You need to connect with people in a smarter way. You need to leverage the human nature that we're talking about. And by doing so, you will become the agent that they're not going to forget. They just physically or physiologically can't forget. That you become the only option, right? And I'm hoping that my timing on this is perfect because there was a joke about this at the start. You are inevitable. Okay. So obviously Thanos is a little bit of a different social engineer, but he is inevitable and, was arguably the most feared villain up until this point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm showing my nerdy side, so I'm going
Did
to close
you,
this
Mike,
down.
did you see my chat?
Yeah, I saw it. I just didn't,
Wa- Was that picture already there? Or did you just add it now?
no, this is already there. See,
What are the chances?
this is how connected we are.
Wow,
So
that's crazy.
yeah. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to come back to all you beautiful faces and check the chat. Hold on. Maria, can you show us an example of the email you send? I can send it out. It is very literally, hey guys, this week we have a condo townhome for sale at 369.9, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. Here's 2 features about it. If you're interested, let me know. It's super, super simple.
That's awesome. Thanks, Mike. Could you also send the email that is your funny introductory email with offers?
So it's uniquely written for each person.
Yeah, just send whichever one you did last. That'd be great.
Sure, I will.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Mike, you're the best.
I think it actually is you. So
Yeah, they're gonna be like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, but they'll have a good laugh.
yeah. That's what I'm here for. Some laughs and making deals happen. That's all.
Yeah, it kind of puts people's guard down, I guess, eh?
Yep.
I like it.
And it's my authentic self. I can't sit there and be like, blah, blah, blah. This is all I'm doing for you. That's just how I roll. And it may not work for everyone. But be your authentic self is probably the most important part.
Sounds good, brother.
Maria, that you're very welcome. I'm glad you pulled something away from it. You think you're going to take a crack at the 30-day plan? Nice. And if I can help in any way, I'll leave my direct email in here so you guys can have it. Send me some questions. If if you want to see the template for everything that I do, happy to share it. Actually, I could probably pull a template up now. Give me 2 seconds. I'll show you. Okay. Okay. Let me come back to share this. Okay, you can see my screen, I'm hoping. Okay. So deal of the week. Subject line, don't miss out. Ottawa's hottest deal of the week inside. Hey, first name. This week's deal of the week is a type of house that will go fast. Here's some info. Bed and bath, 2 important features, price. If you're interested in this deal or get access to our other great deals, just reply and give me a call. I will get those over to you. Boom, done. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Weekly market update. Hey, first name, here are the 5-year rates being offered for fixed and variable. If you were to buy a home for X dollars, the down payment of 5% would be this. Estimated monthly mortgage payment on this property would be this. Median price of homes in Ottawa is that. Number of new homes on the market is X. Number of homes in the Ottawa market put under contract is Y. All this information is as at date. And it's funny, I've had people come back 2 years after being in my system and be like, I'm ready to sell my house now. And I was like, who are you? And they essentially just have followed my emails and have been absolutely lambasted with, 3 times 52 times 2 number of contacts. And so, and I asked them, why me? And they go, well, no one else has ever sent this many emails. Okay, I'll take it. So it works. It may not feel like it works in the minute, but again, that tipping point is always there, right? If you keep putting in the repetitive, consistent effort, there will be a point where you'll look back and be like, I don't know what really turned the knob on things, but this is a great situation to be in. And that's the thing, is it's so unnoticeable, but you know that you've been putting in consistent work. So that is the exact emails that I send. Like I literally just showed you the template. So now you have no excuse not to send them. And if there's no other questions, I can shut her down. And I'll be sure to send you guys out the last email. My pleasure. All right, guys. Hey, 10 minutes early too. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Mike.
Go be productive and
Thanks.
start your plans.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thanks, Mikey.
much.
My pleasure. Bye.